gosh.
Oh
We
my
did
gosh.
it.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Yeah.
I don't know
So,
why. Like lately, it's just been like so weird. Like it's
uh,
hard to get in, and I am so sorry, Krista. But
oh,
welcome to Tap Into Your Creativity.
thank you.
Krista Harris is joining us from Colorado. If you don't know her, she's not only an amazing artist, but an incredible teacher and mentor to me, and inspiration to me, and to so many. And so, welcome again. You're the second time guest on Tap Into Your Creativity, and I couldn't be like more happy for you to be here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I feel pretty lucky to be the second time around, and I feel amazingly lucky that we've gotten this far into the video. We had that crazy storm that blew across here. I guess it was a Wednesday night, and then, just went across the country. But ever since then, our cell towers have been pretty wacky. So I'm blaming it on the cell towers. It couldn't be me or you.
Okay. No, I agree 100%. We can always blame Instagram, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I'm sure
whoops.
it's their fault. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Krista, there's so much to talk about. I mean, you and I met more than a year and a half ago. I can't even believe this, but
I
there's
know.
been a lot of changes, and life has happened. And I'm just curious to know where you are now, and how are you?
That's a good question because just like everybody else, I don't think any of us thought we'd still be in this sort of quasi pandemic, are we okay, are we not okay place right now, and sort of taking stock of how that's affecting us or affected our work or our lives. But for Tap Into Your Creativity, it's just been, I think, an amazing thing. And I've seen so many interviews with so many talented artists that you've done. And that's been, there's just been some real amazing things that have come out of this. People have just risen to the occasion. And for me personally, sometimes I'm up there and sometimes I'm down here. So right now I'm feeling actually pretty good. The light is beautiful. It was 7 degrees when I came out to my studio this morning, so
Oh gosh.
pretty cold.
Oh gosh.
But I'm just sometimes I can sort of ignore that as long as the sun's out and I'm still painting. That's really all that matters. So, but things I think last time you interviewed me, I was, really sort of just taking advantage of the lull and going in a few different directions. I was doing a few figurative pieces, which I've sort of continued to. They're sort of my closet paintings, I have some
Which were
that
actually, they were so interesting, and I
yeah,
think that you had a story line going there, because
yeah,
of the lack of in-person touch and
yeah,
communication. And so I think
yeah.
maybe you went into that with that in
That's the
mind.
way it felt. It didn't, I mean, it wasn't intentional, but when I started stacking them up and around the studio and around me, and I thought, oh, because at that time we were really locked down. I wasn't going anywhere or seeing anyone. So, I had this, and all of them were life size or larger too, so they did sort of feel, comforting and like having friends around. So that was last year's thing. I think I was thinking about this morning, what might be different for me. And I have to say, this past year, I was really grateful to have been able to teach 2 workshops and reconnect with some amazing artists, face to face, and share that energy and camaraderie and everything. So that really was a huge boost for me. Um, but as far as my work goes, I think that there's been more of a shift in maybe some color shift for me. Um, I don't normally use pinks. I never thought myself as a pink person, but suddenly I'm like, pink. It's just there's something hopeful. It's something that is really resonating with me right now. So I have a couple of paintings in my studio that are in that have that palette. So I'm kind of going with that, and just about every painting I do, I sort of consider a little bit of an experiment. So I'm continuing to experiment with different things. And the other thing that was sort of new for me this year too was for the past couple of years, I've been toying with getting back into oil or incorporating oil paint into my work, seeing how I could make that happen. And because I used to paint in oil almost exclusively for a long time, and then, shifted when I sort of began more non-objective work. But it's so, oil paint, oil is just so seductive and so luscious. And but and mostly I just kept buying oil paint, thinking something magical would happen if I had enough paint. And then a friend of mine gave me Kimberly Brooks' book on safe practices, oil painting and safe practices. And that was pivotal for me because I wasn't sure about the mediums to use, and I didn't want turpentine, and I didn't want solvents. And her book was really great for me to read, and it talked about setup and using different oils and what they do, and calcite and chalk and things that I didn't really understand. So it was just like this oil painting for dummies book. So I've been doing a little more of that, which I really like. This sort of.
What do you think? What do you think about it?
Well, I used to think of it, I think before I thought of it as sort of an all or nothing. I didn't really see it as being sort of a mixed media thing. But I'm finding ways to work with, acrylic and then oil on top of it. And I'm really loving that. It just gives
you can
me
see,
the
last post that you've done, I believe maybe that's what you're looking for, and the texture of it, and it's almost like velvety. It's like it's so luscious. And I'm wondering if that's what you did.
It is. That's what I did. And I've got, if you're talking about that one that had the big pink shape in it, that's on my easel. Well, we can look at that in a minute. But I think I got more. I'm always really interested in variations in sheen and texture and things that are goopy and things that are thin. I like that sort of messy sort of stuff, and I was definitely getting some of that. And then in the piece before and the piece that I'm working on now, I'm also working on unprimed canvas, raw canvas. So I'm laying in some sort of watercolory things, So I want it all. That's it. I want it all.
So
I'm pretty greedy.
Can you tell us, Krista, a little bit about your painting practice? What does that look like for, any given day for you?
I still try to be pretty disciplined in terms of when I get up and what my routine is, and when I get in the studio and how I sort of structure my days. That has been more important than ever, but harder to do with the pandemic, because you're just like, oh, am I going to get dressed today, or do I have to put on clothes or anything? But I still try and be in my studio first thing in the morning and just connect somehow, because that's the time that I feel sort of freshest, or my brain is not overwhelmed, and I feel like I can see things that I have started or have in process, and make that sort of instant evaluation about whether they're working or not. And I know I've said this before, but at the end of the day, I can often trick myself into, I'm so tired. I can I think I can trick myself into thinking something's working, or I'm just not, I can't step back enough from it to see what it might need. But in the morning I can. And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, it's better than I thought it was, or like, it wasn't quite where I thought it was going. So I do try and get in my studio first thing in the morning. And then I take a break and, have coffee and check my emails, or, do some marketing parts of the business part of things. And then I'm back in the studio and sort of in and out, which I've always fortunately been able to do. I'm really lucky that I have a studio on my property, and so the pandemic didn't affect my practice that much. So that's pretty much my routine,
Do you find yourself, and I know you and I have talked about it, and we'll talk about it more because actually February 5th,
I'm going to do you.
We're going to switch places here, and Krista is going to interview me for Tap Into Your Creativity. So, and you and I have talked about the ups and downs and the mentality that we have to have as creativity and creators, and how we really, it's sometimes it's a roller coaster of emotions, and it's hard because sometimes you don't find your groove. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that is universal. I think that what happens for artists, and Instagram and social media is part of that, because what you see and what you look at, looks great, and you think, why am I, that's not happening to me? Why am I not doing that? Why am I not, you just judge yourself and compare yourself to things all the time. But in reality, it's a roller coaster, and 1 minute you're up and the next minute you're down, and 1 minute you think that you're on track, and then the next minute you just think, oh, why, how can I even call myself an artist? What am I doing? And it just doesn't get any easier. I mean, I really think that that's just part of the process, but it's brutal. I mean, for me, sometimes I get in that place where I just get pretty paralyzed. And I have a friend, fortunately, who tells me that, I'll say, oh, I'm done. I'm washed up. I'll never do another good painting. And she tells me, we've known each other for a long time, and she says that, she's seen me do it a million times, and when I get to that bottom, it means that I'm just about ready to break out of the other side or start something new or something. So, and I always say, well, that might have been true before, but this time I'm really done. So I'm my own worst enemy sometimes.
And our worst critic too.
And we are all our worst critic. Yeah. We're so harsh on ourselves.
So how do you measure your success?
That's another good question. It's hard not to measure your success by, monetary success. There's two different kinds of success, whether you're showing or selling a work. When you sell a work, it really does boost your spirits, because you think, oh, I can afford to buy some more supplies or something. And it's hard not to think of that as being success. You really have to put that in its own category and be grateful for that when it happens. But for me, I kind of know instinctively, I just get this sort of feeling inside that this is working, or what I'm doing right now, this is exciting for me, that it just feels really like that I'm not regurgitating or repeating something that I've done before, that I've sort of fallen prey to. Whenever it's a real internal feeling, and I think we all have it. I think we know when we're doing our best work, or even if it's not our what. So what do you consider your best work? Is your best work, for me, my best work may not be beautiful or sellable or anything, but it's something that's just, that I almost can't put my finger on. Like, I've surprised myself that came from me, and that it wasn't the product of somebody else's work in my head, or something that just seems like it really came from that really pure place, that
so what do you tell your students when they're asking you, what does success look like? What does creativity look like? What is your, how do you move forward every day?
So that's a question. I don't tell them anything. That's the question I ask them because it's different for different people. The thing that I think is really important is to know how you define that. And it's okay if if what's success for you is different than what's success from somebody else. You just have to acknowledge that and be true to that and pursue that and sort of be, just be open and honest with yourself about, what you need and what you want. That's really a question that you have to keep asking yourself time and time again. It might change, 1 year or 1 month.
Let me ask you this, Krista, for people that didn't watch our first interview, how did you make the transition from being an artist to now being a teacher and a mentor to so many?
Well, it was sort of organic. I'd been painting for a while and showing my work in different places, and I had been taking workshops in the beginning with Steve Imany, who's my mentor, and I just owe so much to. And I had been working for a while, and I had people approach me and ask me if I taught, and I was just like a deer in the headlights. I was like, no, I don't know what I'm doing. I wouldn't begin to think that I could, teach or have anything to offer anybody else. But sort of slowly but surely, I got to that point. In the beginning, I had 3 close friends, Audrey Phillips, Charlotte Faust, and Martika Griffin, and we had been kind of taking workshops together and working together, and we had done a show together at the Bascom in Highlands, North Carolina, and we just, we had a really good artist camaraderie, and we were different parts of the country, and we were, sharing our work and giving each other feedback. And this was when Facebook that was so long ago. Facebook was just beginning, so we were trying to find ways to connect as artists, and we taught together. We taught several workshops together, which was really fun. But it trying to get 3 artists on the same page in the same place and, doing the same thing, it was a bit of a challenge. And so eventually we kind of went our own ways, but it just, it took me a little while to sort of, be comfortable with the idea that I had something to share. And then I had to really, really work at that and think about, because I had been on the other end of the stick where I had been the student, and I had to think, what would I want? What would I want as a student, and how can I connect? And so I am sort of always thinking, I've always sort of got my teaching brain on to some extent, and I think, oh, I've read this, or I've seen this, or this is something, and I'll make notes that might be something to talk about or pursue with a group. And that's sort of how it happened. And I just feel sort of amazed and dazed that I have connected. And that's the best thing, the relationships and the people I've connected with. That's, I'm the winner. That's priceless for me. So yeah, that's been great. Yeah.
And have you had, what do you suggest for someone, for example, who is thinking of making that switch and, and think that they have something to provide? What are some tips that you suggest to go forward with it?
I think if you're thinking along the lines of teaching, I think if you can do some kind of a small group first, or work with a couple people. For a while I did some private one-on-one workshops, and that was nice. It gave me the opportunity to sort of get my feet wet and test different curriculums and ideas, and so I think it's a good idea. You could even get together with a group of friends. Like if you had other artists, you could take turns teaching, small groups or something. This week, so-and-so is going to be presenting, or this month, or something like that. I think it's a good idea to try different things. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to think about I'm starting to think about doing some art coaching on a one-on-one basis. And I'm going to work with an artist that I work with in Santa Fe this past year, Tony Lyons Phillips. She's going to be my first test case. She volunteered for that. So
I love
I'm going to
Tony.
see how it goes. No, I'm going to see what I can learn from her. But yeah, so I'm just, I think it's a good thing to just sort of try out and see if it suits you. And if you...
So did you start your curriculum from zero? Did you were you inspired by someone? Did you look at someone's way of teaching and that resonated with you and then that helped you?
I think it was more like, because I'd worked with Steve, I think for me, I thought more about how to teach differently rather than alike somebody. I thought, well, I loved his approach, but that's not, I don't want to take his curriculum and I have to have my own. It has to sort of come from me. So it just was, I just have lots of notebooks filled with exercises and around certain things that I want the students to explore or experience, really. I thought, what would you get out of this? Where could you take this? What thread can you pull? And so then I just build discussions around it, exercises around that. And some of them, they're so good. Some of them, the simplest exercises, you just can't beat them. And so some of them are warm up and some of them are a little more in depth, but some of them, I'll do time and time again because I get the biggest kick out of watching what people come up with. And every time, I'll say, this will be the best thing you've ever painted, and it'll be a blind contour or something like that. And every time. So there are a few that I use, and have done myself, but a lot of times I'll just be reading things or seeing something and I'll think, wow, I could make an exercise out of that, and then I'll kind of test it out and see how it goes. But it's different from different workshops too. I mean, I'll be in one workshop at one level and students will really resonate with something, and then in another workshop it won't quite connect as well. So I have a whole lot of backup exercises just in case.
Just in case, because you have emerging and then you have very established and amazing artists. So exactly. Your level of teaching, it varies from person to person, which is a beautiful thing because you respect where they are.
Yeah, and the group dynamic is always so important too. Sometimes the group is really gelled and really energetic, and it's all I can do to keep up with them. And, sometimes some people are in different places. So you just have to get a feel, and you just have to try and connect with everybody,
right?
Bring
exactly.
everybody into the conversation. So
exactly.
There's that. Yeah.
So, okay. So let's go around and let's do a little studio tour.
Okay.
And then we'll come back and then you'll sit down and we'll end up and I'll open it for questions. But okay. Do you see the little arrows that you can?
Yeah,
I'm going to
turn
the camera
around. Okay, my studio's a mess.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Great.
I was going to clean up my studio, but I decided
no, I don't want you to clean your studio.
To paint instead the other day. Okay, so let's just do this one first because it's the one that's sort of right front and center. But this is the one. Oh, hang on a second. I've got this kind of crazy gimbal thing. So this was the painting that I think was on my wall. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
And if you can come a little closer so we can see the texture that I was referring to.
Yeah. So so this was or is on unprimed canvas, and you can kind of see some of that, up in the corner, which I really loved. There was, and I have a lot of charcoal on there. And then, some thin washes. The first thing I did was put in a lot of this sort of blue-gray color and then this gold and some marks. And then because this was so new for me, the way of painting on raw canvas, I didn't know what to do with it. I just left it hanging on my wall for the longest time. I thought it had potential, real potential, but I got to that point where I didn't want to barrel through it like I sometimes do, and you just kind of keep pushing and pushing. I kind of wanted to sit with it and let it, tell me what to do, basically.
I mean, your technique is so beautiful because the way that you apply the paint and the brushes and the mark making that you have is very organic and almost feels like, you are always, in the limit of, is there a figure in there? Is there, a landscape in there? It's just a very organic way, the way that you apply your paint.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate description. I do love drawing, and I think, that sort of organic hand of the artist style really resonates with me. So
is the pink, is that like oil stick?
There's a little bit of everything there. There's some acrylic, and then on the very top, there's some oil stick. I think some of that white in there was oil stick because you can get that really nice sticky white color, which I love.
I love the texture. It's just
there's some real red and stuff.
Rich and gorgeous, and and reds and pinks and oranges, as you know, it's sometimes very hard to use. So this was very successful.
It's hard for me to use because, like I said, I'm not a pink person, but maybe it's seasonal. This might be a Christmas painting or something. And so I'll just kind of pan around here. This was my oil painting station, which isn't fully, I have this whole thing filled with paint. And I'm sort of set up right there to just wheel that out and
that's awesome.
Shift gears. But this, let's see if I can get a picture of this one. This one's kind of big. So this is what I started yesterday.
Oh my goodness.
My daughter, I wish I could take it off the wall and show you the back of it because that's the best part. It's a big canvas, like 54 by, for me, it's like 54 by 64 or 70, something like that. And I had this really beautiful stretcher bar kit from Masterpiece Canvas that I think they call it their Elite or something. And it's like putting together a Chinese puzzle. And so when my daughter was here in October, she stretched this canvas for me, and I was so grateful. So I pulled it out, and it's a similar process. I started with a lot of washes and pouring, and then have gone back into it, and it's kind of the same thing. You can see.
You can see, and I think when you start with a wash or an undercolor painting, it gives it so much dimension.
It does, and for me, I think if I had all the paint and all the marks the same way or made out of the same material or something, it would be, they're not going to pop as much,
Right.
So I think the differences in the contrast are what you get a lot of mileage out of. So 100%. I don't know where this is going, but you can see I've got some oil stick.
It's more than an awesome start, I would say.
It's a good start.
Wow, so, that's just one day. So how many layers do you think you use at the end of one painting? It depends on each one. I
like to hope or think that I am learning enough that I sort of know how to value the areas that are less worked or less heavily worked, and I don't feel like they have to have a million layers. I just think there's something.
I think the key word that you've said in the past is that you are patient with your paintings. And I think we all have to learn to be patient with our paintings.
Yeah, I'm not always patient with my paintings, but that's what I strive for. I know that my paintings respond better if I am patient with them and I don't lose my temper and try and force them to be something that, you know, they can't really be.
Yeah.
I never get good results if I try and force feed them or something. But so I did I was doing some tests, on just canvas where I was testing different colors. The one thing about raw canvas is it'll dry so much lighter and flatter.
Someone just asked if you use an isolation coat in between the mediums that you're using.
Sometimes I do. And by that, I think they're referring to layers of gel medium, just gel medium. And I
either that or I guess
regularly.
acrylic to oils.
Yeah, I don't think of acrylic to oils as an isolation way, but the way I think about the isolation is that I will often put down a color and then I'll just put clear gel medium on it, and before I go to the next layer, and that sort of isolates that layer from the next one. That way, if I'm scratching back into it or rubbing it down or scraping it down, I can get to that layer without it removing the layer underneath it. So, yeah, I do that as a sort of a technique. And then I'll just take you over here and kind of show you. So I had a lot of works on paper going on lately too. And that's one thing that's been nice for me about the pandemic, is that I just started working on papers in different mediums. And this is just graphite on Duralar, which is like Yupo, that synthetic paper.
Yeah, love Yupo.
And it's just an experiment with mark making, on a bigger scale.
That's so funny. I see it as an embrace of two people.
It does look kind of like a dance or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like an embrace, like comforting.
Yeah, maybe there's something. And then here's another one. Sorry, I know this is kind of jerky, but this one's for paper. It's a little more heavily worked. There's that pink again.
Wow.
But
what paper do you use?
This paper has a deckled edge, so I believe it's probably, I think this is an Arches paper. I'm looking for the mark, but it's a pretty, I got
it looks like Arches,
sheets. Yeah. So I have a bunch of those, and anyway, and I'm looking at doing some collage elements on some of them. So the works on paper are kind of experimental, and let's see what else I have in here. So this is I have to get way back from this because of it's kind of long and skinny, but it's actually on canvas. And I'm trying to I was trying to sort of meld what I was getting on paper, the mark I was getting on paper. I was trying to get that on canvas. And so that's that.
That is a little more structural than your usual painting, right?
It is. To put a big old square architectural element. Yeah. I'm like, I will often do that when I'm working on something. I'll just try and give myself the biggest challenge I can. I'm just going to, I'll do something that's really out of character or that really challenges me to figure it out, or,
I love it. I absolutely love that, Krista. Oh my gosh. So that is challenging.
Yeah. And I have, let me see, I'll pull a couple more out of here. This one, I think I posted this one recently, and it was a piece that I had. Let's see if I can get.
Oh my gosh, Krista, this is fab. What's the dimension on this? 60 by 60?
This is no, let's see. This is a 48 by 54.
Okay.
And I had started it, and it had figures and all kinds of crazy things in it at one point. And then a friend of mine sent me a link to an article or a picture that it was a picture of Alice Bcless and her poodle having tea with Gertrude Stein. And it was just the greatest picture. And so all of a sudden, I just saw, I don't even know. So I just saw this, like, see this little yellow shape that just looked like a leg
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
And then that looked like a head without a face. Anyway, I just said, okay, this is my Alice B. Toklas picture.
Oh
And,
my gosh, I
and
love that.
there's the
Can you go
poodle.
closer to see the
Yeah.
strokes and the mark making?
So, yeah. So I went back in sort of on top of, this one is heavily worked. And like I said, it'd been off and on my wall for a long time, but um,
God, those blues, they come alive,
yeah,
don't they? Wow.
yeah, and it went through a lot of, there's a lot of color in here. This is an actual collage, that little black dot thing up in the corner that was on newsprint, um, and then there's just some heavy black areas and some drawing
Was that
and
like a way to ground your piece?
yeah, I think the black areas were early on because they functioned for me as a compositional elements,
Yeah.
that had a little conversation going on, and I pretty much kept those throughout. Some of them I painted over. Here's the poodle head right here. See, there's the poodle.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what
I
worked
love
for
that
me.
inspiration.
And
That's amazing.
well, sometimes
And I love the
I'll.
color palette. It's very soft, but yet it's so
It is.
powerful and energetic. And your mark making, it's very linear, but in a very organic way. So it just makes you go in and out of the painting.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's something that I like, where you have a lot of marks and you're trying to figure out what's going on and you're trying to read it and there's a story there and you just have to engage your mind. That's for me the art that makes you think about it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a
Yes.
puzzle. So yeah,
Yes.
it's not a one
Yes.
night stand.
So,
So
you,
that was
I posted a painting yesterday that you are donating for Feeding America, and it sold, guys. It sold in a matter of minutes, and we are so grateful to our friend who bought it. And thank you so much. You helped raise 3,500 meals for people in need. And I couldn't do it without my army of artists, which means you and the collectors who are buying the art, because we just couldn't be where we are right now. And I'm just so grateful. Seriously, I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, and me too. I'm grateful to be included in that because I didn't have, I'm not you. I didn't have the energy or the idea, but I'm so grateful to be able to participate in it and to make a difference and make a donation. And I'm grateful to my friend who bought it.
Yeah.
So
can you show it to us? Do you have it there?
Yeah. Hang on just a second. I'll pull it out.
Okay.
It's in here.
Perfect.
Okay, let me see where I can put it so that I'm going to flip this around for a second and put something white behind it. Okay, so let's see. Flip this around. All right, so there's the piece.
Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, it was a piece I had actually had in process, and it's a real mixed media piece. There's a lot of stuff going on. If you get up close, you can see, all different kinds of stuff in there.
Do you gesso the paper? Is it on paper?
No, this is on canvas.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A 24 by 24 on canvas, yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I had it in process, and then when we were talking about a donation, I pulled, I started rooting through my stacks of work and trying to find something that, was worthy of donation. And And we had just had that crazy storm I talked about, where,
Yes.
the one that blew through. I mean, it came in at 4 a.m, and it was lightning, and it was snowing, it was raining, it was thundering, you name it.
We
And
had
it
the
did it
same thing.
all.
We actually in
Yeah,
Minneapolis had the exact same thing you had. It was crazy.
exactly. I know. So, uh, I have been complaining about the weather all my life. And now that there's really something to complain about, it works its way into my paintings a lot. I'm really concerned about that, about climate change. But so that's how I sort of finished this one. I thought, oh, there it is. It's got everything in it. It's got thunder, it's got snow, it's got lightning, it's got rain and wind. And so there again, a little tiny storyline came into play and let me make sense of the piece. So I finished that one off for the donation piece. Yeah.
Awesome. And
So,
can you show us
yeah,
your materials, your paints, and so we can see
oh my gosh.
what you
Okay.
use?
Sure, because I'm a real materials junkie.
I know
So
you
let's
are.
see. All right, so here I have this big table. Let's see how far I can get back from it, but it's just a great big table that I built, on casters. I can move it around, but these are the things that I reach for constantly. So, I have lots of pencils that are water-based colored pencils, acrylic markers, these great big graffiti markers,
do you
which I
like those?
love.
Do you like you like those?
I do, yeah. I really like using them because I think because the way you use them, they're like a mark-making tool as opposed to a brush. So
Right. You have more control.
Yeah, you just have you get a different thing, when you're working with it. So, and then I have millions of dollars of
Seriously, no joke.
these
Oh
art.
my gosh.
I love them. I love all these things. I remember I was in New York City years ago, and I think it was New York Central Art Supply that I'd gone into, and that was the first time I'd ever seen these RNF things, and they were so expensive. And I thought, oh my God, I stood in front of those colors for like an hour because I figured I could afford to buy 2 of them, and I had to decide which 2. So I ended up with this, cobalt yellow, which is so beautiful. And then I bought a German silver one, which is this one, which I don't know if you can see it or not, but it was metallic. So anyway, but then quickly, I guess I just went overboard and I bought everything. So I do use those a lot. I love these Derwent extra large graphite things, and some of them have colors, so I like that. Lots of sticks of anything black.
Charcoal.
Everything black,
yeah.
And then let's see. So, and then over here, you can see some of my paint. And I use everything from golden paint, which I think is the best quality of acrylic paint. But I like to mix it up. So I have other things. I have chroma. I have some fantastic inks and graphite powders that I like.
It's almost being in a lab.
Right? Yeah, or an art supply. It is. It does feel to me. I always feel like it's part science experiment and part paint.
Exactly.
And I've been trying brushes. I have lots and lots of brushes, and I've been trying different systems for organizing my brushes so I can get to them.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
This was one of those IKEA things that was made for, I think, magazines or something.
Exactly.
I do use some house paint sometimes that's down there, and I'll mix that with different things. I spend a lot of time mixing paints in small containers. So sometimes like this, I'll just spend a day or part
Mixing.
of a day mixing colors. And I don't mix up too much of them at once because, they dry up. But that's I like having this big array of colors
Yeah.
so I can just reach for it. I don't like to have to stop and mix it. That somehow breaks my thought process up.
And then you have that ladder that takes you upstairs for more storage.
Well, yeah. So this goes, see if I can back up here. This goes to this little loft in my studio, and there are books and a chair, and I have some things stored up there as well. So it gives me a little extra space. I have a lot of
absolutely
art books.
Love it. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's talk about books.
Books. Yeah. So so at any given moment, I just have stacks of books there's Jerry Salt's How to Be an Artist, Amy Silman, Adrian Genie, Diebenkorn, Christopher Wool, landscape painting, more Diebenkorn. Here's my Joan Mitchell book. Oh. I know everybody that's seen that show is just
I keep looking at pictures of people that have been able to go in San Francisco to watch that show, and I'm like, I want to get there so badly.
Well, it's going to Baltimore after this, I think. So if you don't,
and
get
then
to
I think to
Francisco,
Paris, I heard. So if
my God,
Baltimore, Paris.
There you go. Let's go to Paris. Maybe.
All right, Krista, let's turn around your camera and go ahead and sit down, and I'll open it up for questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to turn back our comments here. So if you guys have any questions, this is the time to ask Krista anything that you would like to ask. But Krista, who are you inspired by now?
Okay, hang on just a second. I'm going to try and get this thing set up so it's functioning.
Yeah, someone just said, worth the trip to San Francisco. I know. And I have so many friends of mine that I could be, but I just can't get myself before it happens.
Yeah.
So when do your online courses start? If you're doing online courses?
Well, I haven't, it's not that official yet. I'm going to do the art coaching with Tony, and we're going to start soon. And then I'm going to kind of work through some of the bumps in the road. So, hang on just a second. This thing's so wobbly. I can't figure out why it won't sit still.
It's so awful. Do you ever take a self-imposed sabbatical from your paintings?
Yes, I do. And I do that sort of because I travel quite a bit. And in the winter, we escape from the snow and the 7-degree temperatures, and we spend time in Arizona and different places. So that becomes a time when I'm sort of, I consider that I'm just sort of gathering intellectual or visual material, and I'll bring it back into the studio later. So sometimes that feels like an interruption, and then sometimes it feels like a real necessary, break. So I do that.
I'm sorry that the piece sold yesterday. Somebody said that they wanted to bid on it today. I know I posted it yesterday and someone DM'd me, so we just decided to sell it. So
good.
So you never know. We might have another part 3 with Krista. So you never know what can happen, right?
I'm going to keep looking and see if I've got something else I can donate. If I can find something, I'll send it to you. Maybe you can sell it.
Sounds awesome. Sounds great. Yeah. And somebody's asking, can you talk a little about using acrylic and oil? Does the oil finish the piece? Yes.
The oil is the last thing that goes on. If you're talking about the technical aspects about what comes first, you always have to have oil on top of acrylic and not the other way around. It won't dry. If you try and put acrylic over oil, it'll never dry. So, technically the oil has to be last. I have put oil on and not liked it, and then wiped it down with some Gamsol and then let that dry. And I was able to go back into it with a little bit of acrylic or charcoal or something else on top of it. But yeah.
Somebody asked if you just use the R and F on the final layers.
Yeah, kinda. I mean, sometimes I will draw a little bit with the RNF early on, and then I'll have to sort of smear it around and kind of scrub it down and stuff, and then I can work back over it a little bit. But yeah, usually it should be the top layer,
Okay.
the last layer.
Okay. Okay. And any books that you recommend right now for us to read?
Well, like I said, I just read the Jerry Saltz's book on how to be an artist. I'm sure a lot of you guys follow him on Instagram. He's
he's a hoot.
He's a hoot. He can be really controversial, and he's just pushing everybody's buttons. But his book, and I love his post. And his book is it's a very readable book, but it's very encouraging. He's been on both sides of it, from the artists and stuff, and he just kind of really highlights some things that we all face. So that's been a book that I have really resonated with. I always talk about On Art and Mindfulness by Enrique Celaya, because just from
I have him now on my literally where, like, everywhere I go, I almost bring it with me, because when you turn me on to him, it's like a Bible for artists.
Well, no, that's exactly the word I was going to use. I remember when I first stumbled onto it, probably, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, I got it, and I was just sitting down, and I just thought, did he write this for me? Because everything in there was just like
it's like a quote, right?
It's
quote after quote. So highly recommended.
Highly recommend that one.
Do you have a routine to get into the flow, or into your flow, I guess?
I think just being quiet when I first go into my studio and spending a little bit of time looking. And the minute it's not very far from my house to my studio, but the minute I walk out of the house, there's something that happens in just that short walk between the house and the studio, where my brain kind of switches into a different place, and I try and get into that really sort of slow looking mindset. I think I can't talk enough about how important looking and slow looking is, and looking closely at things like they're under the microscope, and just sort of slowing down so that you're feeling everything and smelling everything and sensing everything all at once, and just sort of being open to that, all of those experiences, because that's our material as non-objective artists. That's what we try. And
well, I think that you just described what being present is all about.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the word. So yeah, I guess I just try and get into that.
So we have another
mindset.
question from Linda. Did you have formal art training?
Yes, I did. I always considered myself an artist from the time I was little. You believe it. If your parents tell you that's what you are, you believe it. So, and I just started working, as an artist early on, but then I went to East Carolina University and got a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in painting, with a minor in printmaking. And I never thought about going on to get my master's, because at the time, most people that got a master's, the goal was to teach at a college level or something. But so I never did that. But now, that level of art education is very common. And boy, I'd go back to school in a heartbeat if I could.
Me too.
Boy, I'd be like,
and I would like
that
to
book
be,
called,
your studio partner. I mean, your
Yeah.
you know, your study buddy, whatever you call
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. There was a book that somebody wrote a few years ago, and it was called Old and in Art School. And it was about a woman who had quit her retired early, quit her CEO job and went back to art school. And I don't know how old she was at the time, maybe 60 or something. But she was taught, it was a pretty honest look at how, what prejudice is she faced. And, some of the god awful comments that instructors and other students made to her about
Oh my
her
God.
age. And, but I'd be there in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Me too.
Love to
Me
go back
too.
to art school.
So
Yeah.
Lily wants to know, if we go back to the oil sticks, what approximate drying time do they have?
Well, that depends too on the pigments. Some pigments, like some of the blues, dry really slowly. There are mediums that you can mix with them, faster drying mediums that will affect the drying time, and the surface that you're painting on will affect the drying time. So let's say you're working on a gessoed canvas and there's some layers of acrylic underneath it, that's going to take the oil longer to dry. But if you're working with oil on paper, or if you're working with oil on an unprimed canvas, it dries a lot faster. So that's not a very
do you gesso your papers?
No, I don't, because I just love the surface of paper so much. I don't want it to feel like anything but paper. I love when you lay that mark down on paper. It just just makes my heart melt. So I love paper.
Well, before we go, I just want to say, I can't thank you enough. Krista, you've been someone that I have admired. I have gotten to know. I feel like very connected to you. And I'm a little emotional because this is my last interview for the year. I will see you in January 8th. So I want to wish you and everyone watching Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And I hope and I wish that we can all make a better world together by doing one good thing a day. And together we're stronger. I've learned that isolation doesn't work. So find your people, find your community, find your strengths, and do something good. Because together we can really change the world. And it sounds very, out there, but it just takes one person to start doing something good, right?
It's so
all
true.
Of us.
And
I don't see myself as me. I see myself with my army of artists, and I will never say me. I will always say us.
Yeah. Well, you nailed it, Sandra. And when I want to just encourage everybody, when you do start feeling isolated or not up to par, to reach out to people, because they're out there and they're out there for you, and they've all been in your shoes. And I am just so happy to be still doing this and just to be part of this big art community. I mean, there's so much heart in it, and happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you January 8th with Katie Kuhn, which...
Katie.
Yes, Katie. And
Don't
we have a great lineup for January and February, so stay tuned. But again, thank you for everything, and happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, you guys. Thanks, Sandra.
Mwah.